Never going to get good at fencing until you realize that the objective of fencing is to hit your opponent without being hit yourself. Masters have studied this for hundreds of years and have been writing books on how to do just that. That is, how to strike your opponent without getting hit yourself. I've spent an uncountable amount of hours reading through these old manuscripts to learn the secrets of how to hit your opponent without getting hit yourself. In this video, I'm going to hand you off those secrets without all the extra stuff. Fencing is broken up into 3 phases. You have the opening, you have the engagement, and then you have the retreat. The opener is the time of the fencing match when I am outside of my opponent's striking range at the very beginning of the round. So what that means is I am outside of your sphere of influence, you are outside my sphere of influence. I can't strike you in one hit, you can't strike me in one hit. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to maneuver around the ring. The tactic for moving around the ring is called striking the corners. So what I'm doing is I am threatening either your left side or your right side. I'm not directly threatening you from the middle because, as you can already see, I am already exposed on both sides. Pretend you were fencing me and you're in this position, your sword is just right in front of you towards the middle, or you're like this, okay? If I'm striking the corners, all I have to do is either strike your right side or strike your left side. And you're going to need some really good reflexes in order to parry that. And you're only going to be able to get a parry out of it, unfortunately, which, as you progress, you're going to realize that intentional parries are bad and you should actually be focusing on master cuts. But we're not there yet. We're not there yet. We're going to start with the opener. So you maneuver around, pick a side, left or right, whichever side is most exposed. If I'm a left-handed fencer, I have all of this space over here that I'm exposed. And what it means to be exposed is I'm going to have to do some kind of big movement or a readjustment with my whole body in order to defend that side. Whereas here, I can just stick my sword out or stick my sword forward and I'm guarded on this side. So you need to threaten or attack your opponent's exposed side. And this is where we're going to get into Vorenacht. What the hell did you just say? What is a Vorenacht? Vorenacht just simply means before and after. This is sort of how we fencers know whether or not to be offensive or defensive. So you can also break it down into action and reaction, okay? So if we were fencing and I decided to strike you, this would have happened in the before. So the before is me committing to an attack. Whatever you choose to do, if you choose to do anything at all, is a part of the after. This is a universal fencing law. This is something you can't escape from in fencing, before and after. If you are in the after, you are going to do something, pretty much. So back to that, if I was going to attack in the before, in the after, I would thrust forward, I would parry the strike, and then I would score a hit, okay? And that's the essence of master cuts. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. We're not at master strikes or anything like that yet. We're just focused on staying in the ring for more than 3 seconds. So here's the other key to before and after. It's not necessarily a binary, static keeping of time. Think about it like this. I attack in the before. Time doesn't stop. If you choose to not do anything in your after, then I get the before again. So with that being said, if I throw this cut and my opponent does nothing in the after, then I'm back in the before, and I can strike again and make a threat. Let me say that again. If I strike in the before and my opponent doesn't do anything, the after becomes the before and is granted to me. So therefore, I can strike again, regardless of whether or not my opponent actually reacted to what I did or not. So you can't escape this, and you need to understand. So if we're just moving around, and this isn't necessarily having to do with striking per se, even just movement. Even if I just move around, this is still before and after. So I take a before step, I move here. Let's say my opponent moves and is after. I move in the before, because he's reacting to what I'm doing. And then I'm setting a new sort of signal. They respond to that. This is how you don't get doubles. You need to respect the threat, okay? It doesn't matter if they do a feint, don't worry about that. If they're looking like they're going to strike you with a sword, they're in the before. So therefore, you need to adjust to the after. How do I know if I'm in the before or if I'm in the after? So this is another universal law called right of way. Right away is going to determine whether or not you are in the before and after. How do I know if I have right of way? What is right of way? Right of way is the right to attack. It's an indicator. If I have the right of way, that means I can attack and I can be safe. This is a safe attack. Fencing is not freaking Star Wars where you're just swinging for the fences, berserker raging. It's not For Honor. It's not Assassin's Creed. This is tactical, this is strategic, this is calculated. If I have right of way, I can safely attack. And I don't have to worry about a counter. I don't have to worry about a parry. I know that my strike is going to hit. Okay? So how do I get right of way? You get right of way by threatening your opponent. The simplest way to threaten your opponent is to stick your sword in their face. What am I supposed to do if my opponent has right of way and their sword is in my face? Good question. So the best defense to somebody threatening you with their point is to put your point in their face as well. Swords are great offensive weapons, but they also have amazing defensive capability. This right here is called a crossguard. The crossguard aligns to your forearm. If the crossguard is in alignment to your forearm, then it is protecting you, it is doing its job. If there's a space between you and the opponent, which is common during the opening phase, this is going to keep you protected, okay? And at the very least, it'll give your opponent something to think about. They can't just, like if I was your opponent, and I'm like, all right, I'm ready to thrash, okay? If I'm approaching you and say you stick your sword out in front of me, I have to stop and think for a minute. Otherwise, I'm going to go right into your sword. So if someone has seized the right of way, seized the vor, seized the before, has initiative, acting first, going first, first turn, however you want to put it, in the opening, you can usually counter just about anything by just sticking your point in the opponent's face. And at the very least, it'll halt your opponent's attack during the right of way. And a cool thing is going to happen where you are now going to get right of way. And whatever you choose to do next is going to take you into the next phase of fencing. The old masters called the second phase of fencing war. What you need to do to survive the war is you need to do what Talhofer calls war work. Talhofer had a very simple, very effective strategy within the war. And say we're engaged, so we're inside each other's sphere of influence. You can strike me, I can strike you, and I end up somewhere here, our swords are crossed somewhere. what I see a lot of longsworders do is they make the mistake of attacking from the same side. This is a mistake because this keeps me in my position. So my opponent knows where I'm at. And if I move, or if I try to readjust from the same side, I still have all of this open to be struck. So say we're fencing, we cross up, and you try to disengage and go to your other side. If you try to do that, I am going to shift my weight to my other side, and I'm going to strike you. But as you can see, I can do this way faster. Why? Because my foot is carrying me through the movement. I'm changing sides. Like for example, my chest is facing out this way, and then I pull back, and now my chest is facing that way. This is the essence of swimming. So if you're in the war, you stay alive by simply moving from one side to the other. This is going to give you really effective cuts. This is going to allow you to attack openings. It's going to allow you to stay competitive. Do not attack from the same side unless you are absolutely sure you are going to score a point. And in fact, there is a way you can strike from the same side. All you have to do is thrust. Let's talk about thrusting attacks for just a second. A thrusting attack is when I'm using the point of my sword and I'm trying to hit a specific target, and I'm going to extend and lunge and launch my sword forward, something like that. This is a very basic lunge, okay? I'm aiming to go through the opponent. Now, let me just say, we are fencing, we're just playing a game, this is a sport. I'm not actually trying to impose any kind of harm on my opponent, okay? But these things are safe, these things bend. If you have a 350 Newton jacket or higher, you're gonna be okay. Your jacket can take thrust attacks, okay? So, how do I do this? When should I thrust? Because if I just walk into you like this isn't really going to help because of what we said earlier. If someone is just going to run into you like that, I'm probably just going to move to the side and then cut you when I have right of way, okay? So when are thrusts helpful? Thrusts make great second actions. Why do they make great second actions? Think about it like this. If you attacked me and you want to pull back and cut, that's fine. But if you just thrust, you're still putting much more pressure on me. So if I cross up with somebody and they try to thrust, I have no choice but to either follow that through and stay in the defensive, or I'll have to do some kind of technique where I can, capture the sword, maybe do some winding, okay? We're not there yet. We're not talking about winding, we're not talking about this or that. That's for other videos. But all you need to know right now is when you throw an attack and you're in war, it's not a bad idea to thrust. I would practice this, especially if you're a beginner. I would train myself to attack and thrust rather than attack and go offline and switch. Not saying that that's bad either, but this is going to give you right of way. It's going to give you before, it's going to keep you in the fight, and still look, I still have so much distance away from the opponent, okay? It's going to keep you in the ring, trust me. This is another really important consideration. Ideally, you should be able to strike your opponent down before the war even starts, because that's going to be your before, right? But say you don't get lucky in your before, and now you're in war, okay? So I thrust, he defends the thrust. I have two options here. And what I want you to do as a beginner is I want you to pull your sword back to where your pommel is just in front of your hip, and I want you to back off. This is the retreat. Why I say you should back off is you're already extended over here. Your opponent is probably retreating from your thrust right now. It is better to fall back, hold some ground, and re-enter the war whenever you have a better position. This goes all the way back to what I said earlier with striking the corners. If I pull back, I can move around, I can readjust, I can reassess, I can reanalyze. This is going to keep me safe. Remember what I said, the objective of fencing is to hit the opponent without getting hit yourself. You have all the time in the world to hit your opponent. You don't need to rush. You don't need to rush, you need to calculate. You need to strategize. So there is no shame in pulling back and exiting war. This is what you should do as a beginner. This is what I want you to do as a beginner. Once you get a little bit more advanced and you've got your strikes down and you have those instincts and you know just where to go, then yeah, after you throw your thrust, wind and follow up with some stuff. And then, then you can exit the war after maybe throwing, 3-4 cuts. But you need to get in the habit of pushing and also retreating. So those are the 3 phases of fencing. You have the opener, you have the engagement, and you have the retreat. This all goes around full circle. So as I'm retreating, and I fully retreated, now I'm back in the opening, and we're back where we started, which isn't a bad thing. Ideally, like I said, we want to end the fight before it really truly starts. But it's not always going to shake up like that. But by following this method of opening, engaging, and retreating, you're going to be able to last in the ring a lot longer. And what you're going to start noticing is that these other fencers cannot keep up with you because their minds are so locked into just going in for the home run that you being able to defend yourself against their assault and also pulling back and resetting everything, giving you the before instead of the after, they're not going to know what to do. And they're going to get tired. They're going to start making mistakes. They're going to start getting stressed. The 3-phase strategy given to us by the old fencing masters also helps us organize and construct how we want the fight to go. I see way too many fencers out here, especially with weapons like these, that are jumping right into the war. They're not thinking, they don't have a plan, they don't have a strategy. They're just in the moment and they're just going to go all out. This doesn't make you a good fencer. Fencing is all about hitting the opponent without getting hit yourself. If there's no strategy, the rate of doubling has gotten a million times higher. If you are a fencer and if you are a serious committed fencer and you want to be good at historical fencing, you must avoid doubles at all cost. It doesn't matter if you got hit or if you hit the other person. If that happened, then the fencing was done right. You're not invincible. You're not going to be able to counter every single thing that comes your way. You're going to slip up. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to be off by a few inches. It is what it is, okay? Nobody's invincible. We're all human beings. But by employing some strategy and sticking to our fundamentals, we are able to play this game with a much higher success rate. And when we go up against those opponents who don't have any strategy, they don't have any tactic, they're just a guy with a sword, we're going to be able to handle that very easy. I mean, that's the point of why many of these manuals existed. This is why people study the art of the sword, is so that they can have some structure, some strategy, some tactic. This is the beauty of fencing. So promise to yourself, if you're going to become a historical fencer, that you are going to learn the principles of fencing and you're going to abide by the universal laws of fencing so that you can fence beautifully, honorably, and respectfully. My name is Shields. You're in the Fighters Guild. Train hard